Nostalgia. A very powerful thing for those of us who remember something from the past and have very fond memories as we experienced it at a young age. For that is really nostalgia. It's a comfort food of sorts, I guess you could say, emotionally. So, that is the key theme for today's special top 20 list. Been a while since I've done one of these. This is going to be unique. I'm looking at total 20 animated things. In total, there are going to be 4 categories, and I'm looking at these key elements, movies and shows that have a heavy amount of nostalgia. If it comes on, it's not necessarily my absolute top favorites of all time, it's just ones that give me the hardest nostalgia feels. It takes back to a time when life was more simple. With that said, there are total 4 categories, 5 in each category. 5 anime shows that have a heavy amount of nostalgia for me. 5 animated shows, so Western animated shows. 5 heavily nostalgic anime films, and 5 nostalgic animated films. So, with that said, I'm calling this top 20 nostalgia animations of all time. So, with that said, we will do countdown starting at 5 of each category. First up, starting at number 5 in category 1, looking at most nostalgic anime shows of all time. First, coming in at number 5 for anime shows that have a heavy amount of nostalgia for me was at 5, Sailor Moon. Yes, Sailor Moon was one of my first animes I would ever watch. Originally released in 1992, I would see it for the first time around 1996 97 on Fox. Actually, prior to Fox Kids show, my local station, Fox 11, would do, and it would be come on along with a few other older classic animes as well before Fox Kids would start. Later, Sailor Moon would be very well known, becoming part of the Toonami lineup on Cartoon Network. But I still have a heavy amount of nostalgia to this day for Sailor Moon, as it was pretty much the first magical girl anime I ever saw, and one of probably the first 10 animes I ever watched. So it does have a heavy amount of nostalgia for me personally. With that said, number 5 most nostalgic animated shows. Technically originally released in 1987, would become better well known as part of the Disney Afternoon in the 90s. For fifth most nostalgic animated show of all time for me is DuckTales. It is definitely, I think, a big thing for many people, and it's one of those theme songs that you will never get out of your head once it's in. It will stay like a earworm in your head forever. And it has very memorable characters, honestly, that I will always love, like Gizmo Duck and many others, of course, also Launchpad, or wrong animated show. But with that said, coming in fifth most nostalgic anime film for me, originally technically released in 1994, though I first saw it around like 97, 98, and that is Street Fighter II, the animated movie, which is definitely not a family friendly movie. It's basically a PG 13, but anyone who's seen the movie knows what I'm talking about. A specific scene with Chun-Li before the infamous Vega Chun fight knows what I'm talking about. It's definitely not a family friendly animated film to watch, that's for sure. More for teenagers. With that said, fifth most nostalgic animated film of all time. Released in 1995, it was the first ever full CGI animated film, and I think for many of us out there, is very nostalgic. It was the very first Pixar film ever released. So yeah, needless to say, I loved it when they finally introduced the world from this in Kingdom Hearts 3. And number 5 is the original classic Toy Story. Always will have a heavy amount of nostalgia, along with, I would say, A Bug's Life, are the top 2 Pixar films that have the most nostalgia for me. Coming in at number 4 of nostalgic anime shows, technically originally released in 1988, known as Samurai Warriors, would come in the mid-90s, and this would be the other animated show I would see on Fox besides Sailor Moon, just a bit earlier, a couple hours before Fox Kids. And that is Ronin Warriors was another one of my first, I would actually even say Ronin Warriors would probably be my first 5 animes I ever watched. So there's definitely a heavy amount of nostalgia factor for me personally, even more so with Ronin Warriors, especially with great villains like Emperor Talpa and many others. Coming in at number 4, most nostalgic animated shows of all time. It's one that is absolutely not family friendly, that is for sure. Released and done by HBO, released in 1997. It would last 3 seasons. All-time classic for me and favorite. Todd McFarlane's Spawn, or better known as Spawn the Animated Series. But yeah, definitely not a show for little kids, that is for sure. It's rated 17 and up for a reason. If you don't blame me, look it up. Like, I think you can find clips on here on YouTube and stuff. If you're all curious, it is a amazing show. Yeah, Spawn was an edgelord and still is, but that's why I love edgelords. What can I say? Coming in at number 4, more on the family-friendly side of things, would be my second ever Studio Ghibli film. I would first see in 1998 at a local video rental store. I miss those days of rental video stores. Number 4 most nostalgic anime film for me is Kiki's Delivery Service, all-time classic. Also, my 4th most nostalgic animated film of all time, released in 1997, and that is Cats Don't Dance. A little bit less well known out of the ones on here for me, but it has a heavy amount of nostalgia, and I still watch Cats Don't Dance to this day off and on. I love just the character interactions. And this was one of the earlier animated films that used some CGI in scenes, and I think it was executed very well. It's unfortunate the film was only a mild success, though I think it is one of the best non-Disney animated musicals of all time. It really harkens back to earlier era musicals and stuff, but it has a heavy amount of nostalgia for me, honestly, and probably always will. With that said, coming in 3rd most nostalgic, at least, anime series for me, technically released in 1997, is the very first season. None of the other seasons honestly have the nostalgia, but for me, 3rd most nostalgic anime of all time is Pokemon The Indigo League, or Season 1 rather. For me, that will always be the main Pokemon era that I will always love was Indigo. I do have a soft spot for Johto. I'm 50-50 on the Orange Island era. But for me, Indigo League will always be top tier, and that was back when I legit actually do have a lot of fondness of Pokemon. Was the first season, and nothing as much after that. Yeah, I would continue off and on playing games, and play the card game at the time, but as far as shows remain, Indigo League will be the only one that honestly has nostalgia for me. Coming in 3rd most nostalgic animated show of all time, released in 1994, would last 5 seasons. 3 is Spider-Man the Animated Series. Always will have a heavier amount of nostalgia for me than Batman the Animated Series, because Spider-Man was the first really comic book animated show I would get into, and would be the reason I became a lifelong Spider-Man fan. Plus, it would be my introduction to Todd McFarlane as well. So, with that said, also, let's admit, the animated series Venom was top tier. Also, I think Cleus Cassidy was great, how he was betrayed in the show. Also, love so many other elements to it, like Hobgoblin, the Green Goblin, Dr. Otto Octavius, which still remains probably neck and neck as my favorite adaptation, with also Marvel Spider Man 1 game version of Octavius. With that said, coming in at number 3, favorite anime film or nostalgic anime film is Dragon Ball Z The Tree of Might. Released originally in 1990, I would see around like 97, 98 time frame. So yeah, arguably the most nostalgic of the DBZ films for me personally. Also, at third most nostalgic animated film of all time, I'm curious there are people, but this was one of the earlier animated films I would see on the big screen, which is why I had such a big impact, and probably one of the reasons when I was a kid I loved, the old classic playing cowboys and Indians and stuff. That being released in 1991 on the big screen, which I saw it, Fievel Goes West, the sequel to American Tail. Overall, as a film, I prefer American Tail very much so, but Fievel Goes West has a very hard nostalgia for me personally, just because of being one of the first animated films I would see on the big screen. I would say up there as one of my earliest animated films I ever saw on the big screen was also Aladdin. But nostalgia wise, Fievel Goes West really does hit hard, and I do have a soft spot for a lot of the characters in Fievel Goes West, especially the villain. As for American Tail was weak, no real villain. Fievel Goes West actually had a legit interesting villain. Coming in at number 2, most nostalgic anime series of all time, released in 2000, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a harder nostalgia for me than even Pokemon Indigo League. Between the card game and the fact that I still to this day love, honestly, rewatching Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it has a heavy amount of nostalgia, taking me back to a much more simpler time, as with many people out there. I feel like our generation, the millennial generation, is one of the biggest generations when it comes to nostalgia stuff. Coming in at number 2, most nostalgic animated show of all time, or for me, anyways. Um, Released in 1994, Gargoyles. The main reason I ever became obsessed and interested in doing religious studies, theology, study of ancient religions, the ancient gods. It's just fascinating, and it would be my introduction to characters like Puck. Of course, also Lord Oberon, Queen Titania, which, of course, is in classic tales about Lord Oberon, ruler of Avalon, as well as many other great characters like Mona, and just a heavy amount of nostalgia. Gargoyles really is one of the big things for me. Second most nostalgic anime film of all time, released in 1997, would be my very first Miyazaki Studio Ghibli film I would ever see. Princess Mononoke, which is probably one of the most mature films also they ever did. But there is just something special about Princess Mononoke, probably because of being my first Miyazaki film of all time, it's probably why. Also, my second most nostalgic anime film of all time, originally released in 1996, I would see it several years later, and that would be The Transformers, the movie. Definitely hits really hard nostalgia. I mean, I definitely have a nostalgia spot for original Transformers, but the movie, I mean, it's just great. And the fact they got to voice Galvatron, Leonard Nimoy, Spock, is crazy. Also, the fact they managed to get a certain someone to do the voice of Unicron. Yeah, it's just all time. greats all around. The soundtrack is what really does it for me on the nostalgia. Stan Bush, and also my introduction of music to also a little someone called Weird Al Yankovic. Coming at number one, most nostalgic anime of all time is Dragon Ball Z. Shouldn't be really a surprise. It was one of my first 5 animes I ever watched, and I still, of course, for the sake of my channel and everything, I owe everything to Dragon Ball Z as a whole. And always will probably be my favorite anime series, as well as most nostalgic. With that said, most nostalgic Western animated show for me, released in 1996, we go to probably one of the best well written shows as far as archetypes and everything. Yeah, the graphics and stuff have dated very badly, but it was only like the second ever full CG animated show of all time done by Mainframe Entertainment. Number one is Beast Wars Transformers because of how great the characters are, like Megatron, Dinobot, MVP, and I love the sarcasm of Rat Trap, the ridiculous stupid hero personality of Silverbolt. Plus, I love the interactions of like Black Arachnia as well as Tarantulas and many others, and all the head nods to original Transformers series. Number one most nostalgic anime film to me, that was a little bit later, still has a heavy amount for me. Miyazaki film, released in 2001, Spirited Away. Arguably, not only my favorite anime film of all time, in general, most nostalgic as well. And number one favorite, as well as most nostalgic animated film of all time, released 1994 on the big screen, and would be one of the probably first 5 animated films I ever saw on the big screen, and that being The Lion King. I mean, but overall, I think that's a way for a lot of people, has especially the introduction scene on the big screen the first time, seeing Scar. I mean, I saw like Lion King, I believe, like 4 times in theater on the big screen, so that should explain why it's so influential and stuff for me personally, and why it's so nostalgic because I've seen it so many times. I even went out to theaters when they did the remastered version on the big screen. I even went out and saw it again. With that said, that is 20 of my most nostalgic animations of all time. Leave a comment below, let me know if you'd like me to do another one of these sorts of things in the future, where I do like 4 categories or some and do a top 12, or may a top 10 and then just do 2 categories, 5 each. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time, and stay safe out there. And hopefully enjoyed the Final Fantasy VIII music in the background, as it's my most nostalgic video game, especially RPG of all time.